I never thought I'd be living in a run-down motel at 71 years old. Not after building a successful cattle ranch worth over $4 million. Not after raising 3 children and putting them through college. But here I am, sitting on this creaky bed, staring at a check for $15,000, supposedly my fair share after my son Travis sold my ranch behind my back. The ranch that I built with my bare hands over 45 years. The ranch where I buried my wife Sarah under her favorite oak tree after cancer took her 5 years ago. The ranch that was supposed to stay in our family for generations. I trusted my son when he said he needed to be added to the deed for estate planning purposes. I believed him when he promised it would protect the family legacy. What I didn't know was that he'd been planning to sell it to developers all along, cashing in on prime Texas Hill Country real estate while I was recovering from heart surgery. Yesterday, I confronted Travis at his daughter's graduation party in front of our entire family. I revealed everything, including the secret I've kept for 30 years that changed everything. The look on his face when the truth came out, I'll never forget it as long as I live. I've spent my entire life in Kerrville, Texas. Built that ranch from nothing back in 1978 with Sarah by my side. We started with just 50 acres and a small herd, living in a double-wide trailer while we saved every penny. Over decades, we expanded to nearly 500 acres of prime hill country land, with Guadalupe River frontage and some of the best grazing in Kerr County. Sarah and I raised 3 children there. Travis, my oldest, at 45, my daughter Melissa, who's 42, and Jake, my youngest, at 38. Travis always seemed the most interested in the ranch, following me around from the time he could walk, learning about cattle, fencing, and how to manage the land. At least, that's what I thought. Looking back, there were signs I missed. When Travis was 16, I caught him selling off some of our prize bull semen to a neighboring ranch without my permission. He'd pocketed nearly $5,000 before I discovered it. I was furious, not just about the money, but the betrayal. This was our livelihood, not some get-rich-quick scheme. I made him return every cent and work the ranch without pay for 6 months. "Dad, you don't understand business opportunities," he told me then. "This place could be worth so much more if you just think bigger." Sarah always said Travis was just ambitious, that he'd settle down eventually. And for a while, it seemed like he had. He went to Texas A&M, got his business degree, and started a real estate company in San Antonio. He'd come home for Sunday dinners with his wife Diane and their kids, Taylor and Ethan. Everything seemed fine. After Sarah passed in 2019, things changed. I was lost without her. We'd been married for 47 years, and suddenly I was alone in that big ranch house. Travis started visiting more often, bringing up the subject of estate planning and tax advantages. He introduced me to his friend Carlton, who he called his financial advisor. "Dad, you need to think about the future," Travis would say. "Adding me to the deed is just smart planning. It'll save thousands in estate taxes when you pass. The ranch stays in the family either way." Melissa and Jake both lived out of state by then. Melissa in Colorado with her wife, and Jake in California with his tech job. They'd call to check on me, but Travis was the one who was here, the one who seemed to care about the ranch's future. So when Travis brought those papers for me to sign last year, I trusted him. I believed him when he said it was just a formality, a way to protect the ranch for all of them after I was gone. What he never knew, what none of my children knew, was the promise I'd made to Sarah on her deathbed. She made me swear that the ranch would always remain intact, that I'd find a way to keep it in the family but preserve the land. She'd spent decades nurturing every acre, knowing the names of every cow, planting native wildflowers along the fence rows. The ranch wasn't just land to her, it was her life's work, her legacy. "Promise me, Richard," she'd whispered, holding my hand with what little strength she had left. "Promise me you won't let them sell it off for some subdivision or strip mall." I promised her. I even put it in my will that the ranch could never be sold outside the family and had to remain a working ranch. But that will became worthless the moment I added Travis to the deed as a joint owner, a fact I didn't understand until it was too late. The grand gesture I'd planned was establishing a trust that would turn the ranch into a nature preserve and agricultural education center after my passing, with enough money set aside to maintain it for generations. I'd been working with a lawyer in secret to make it happen. I wanted to surprise my children with the news at Travis's daughter Taylor's high school graduation party. I thought they'd be proud. Instead, I was the one who got the surprise. Travis's graduation party last Saturday was supposed to be a celebration. Travis and Diane had gone all out, renting the pavilion at the Guadalupe River State Park, hiring a local barbecue outfit to smoke brisket and ribs. Nearly 100 people showed up, family, friends, neighbors I'd known for decades. I arrived early to help set up, feeling good despite the lingering weakness from my heart surgery 3 months prior. That operation had been rough, triple bypass with complications that kept me in the hospital for nearly 3 weeks. Travis had handled everything while I was laid up, from paying my bills to checking on the ranch. At least that's what he told me. "Dad, you're looking better," Travis said when I arrived, clapping me on the shoulder. "How's the chest feeling?" "Getting stronger every day," I told him. "Doctor says I should be back to full ranch work by fall." Something flickered across his face, discomfort, maybe even guilt, but it disappeared so quickly I thought I'd imagined it. The party was in full swing by noon. I sat at a picnic table with my old friend Henry Martinez, who'd ranched the neighboring property for as long as I had. "Haven't seen you around much, Richard," Henry said, sipping his beer. "Everything okay at your place? Noticed some surveyors out there last month." "Surveyors?" I frowned. "Must be mistaken. Haven't authorized any surveys." Henry looked confused. "Well, they had papers and everything. Big crew from Austin. Thought maybe you were planning some improvements." Before I could ask more, Travis appeared with a plate of brisket for me. "Dad, you need to eat something. Doctor's orders, remember?" Henry excused himself, and Travis sat down, unusually attentive. Throughout the afternoon, every time I tried to talk to old friends about the ranch, Travis would interrupt or pull me away to meet someone new. Around 3 o'clock, I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. I was coming back from the restroom when I passed Travis talking with a man I didn't recognize. They were partially hidden behind a large oak tree, speaking in low voices. "The zoning commission meeting is Tuesday," the stranger said. "Once that's approved, we're clear to close on the 1st of next month." "The old man doesn't suspect anything?" "No," Travis replied. "He thinks he's still got control. By the time he figures it out, it'll be too late. The $15,000 is more than generous considering the circumstances." "$15,000?" the man chuckled. "Out of $4 million? That's cold, even for you, Travis." "Look, nobody said business was pretty. Dad's old school. He'd never understand the opportunity here. Riverwood Estates will make us all rich, and he gets to live comfortably in a nice assisted living facility. Everybody wins." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Riverwood Estates? Assisted living? I must have made a noise because they both turned suddenly. "Dad?" Travis looked startled. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "What have you done, Travis?" The stranger quickly excused himself as Travis pulled me aside, his friendly demeanor replaced with cold efficiency. "Dad, let's not make a scene. This was always the plan. The ranch is worth millions as a development property. You're not getting any younger, and that heart attack proved you can't manage it anymore." "It wasn't a heart attack," I said. "It was scheduled surgery, and I'm recovering just fine." "Details," he waved dismissively. "The point is, I've found a buyer willing to pay top dollar. Hill country real estate like this doesn't come along every day. We're talking $4 million, Dad. $4 million. We? There is no we in this, Travis. That ranch is mine. Your mother and I built it. And now it's half mine," he interrupted, pulling a folded document from his pocket. "Remember these papers you signed last year? Joint ownership with right of survivorship. Legally, I can sell without your consent." I snatched the paper, scanning it with growing horror. It wasn't the document I thought I'd signed. This wasn't just adding him to the deed. This was giving him equal ownership and decision-making power.
"You tricked me," I said, my hands shaking. "Your own father?" "I did what was necessary," Travis replied coldly. "The deal closes next month. You'll get $15,000 to help with the transition. I've already found a nice place for you in Fredericksburg, Sunset Pines. Good food, activities, medical staff on site. I'm not going to any damn assisted living facility." I felt my face getting hot, my chest tightening dangerously. "That ranch is staying in this family. I promised your mother." "Mom's dead, Dad," Travis cut me off, "and her sentimental attachments to that outdated operation died with her. This is business, the smart play. Your $15,000 will last maybe 2 years in assisted living. My $2 million will set up my family for generations." I stared at my son, this stranger wearing Travis's face. In that moment, something inside me snapped. All those years of hard work, Sarah's dying wish, my children's legacy, all of it about to be bulldozed for some luxury housing development. "You always were too smart for your own good," I said quietly. "But there's something you don't know, something that changes everything. And everyone at this party is about to hear it." Travis's confident smile faltered. "Dad, don't make a fool of yourself. Nobody wants to hear an old man's ramblings." I straightened my back, ignoring the pain in my chest. "Oh, I think they do, especially when it concerns the true ownership of that ranch." I walked straight to the pavilion center, where Taylor's graduation cake sat on a decorated table. The DJ was playing some country song, and people were mingling, laughing, enjoying the perfect hill country spring afternoon. Travis followed close behind, whispering urgent threats that I ignored completely. "Could I have everyone's attention, please?" I called out, my voice stronger than it had been in months. The music faded, conversations died down, and all eyes turned to me. "First, I want to congratulate my granddaughter Taylor on her graduation," I began, smiling at her confused face in the crowd. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." Then I turned to face the gathering. I recognized nearly every face: neighbors, family friends, people I'd known for decades. Travis stood frozen a few feet away, his expression a mixture of anger and panic. "Some of you have known me and my late wife Sarah for over 40 years. You know we built our ranch from nothing, through droughts and floods, good markets and bad. What you don't know is that my son Travis has secretly sold that ranch to developers behind my back while I was recovering from heart surgery." A murmur ran through the crowd. Diane, Travis's wife, looked genuinely shocked, her hand covering her mouth. "Dad, that's enough." Travis stepped forward. "You're confused. The medication." "I'm not confused about being handed a check for $15,000, my fair share of a $4 million sale," I continued, pulling the check from my pocket and holding it up. "I'm not confused about being told I'm headed to an assisted living facility while bulldozers tear down everything Sarah and I built." Travis's face had gone pale. "This isn't the place." "But here's what Travis doesn't know," I said, raising my voice over his. "That ranch doesn't actually belong to either of us, and it never did." The crowd went completely silent. Even the birds seemed to pause their singing. 30 years ago, back in 1995, Sarah and I were nearly bankrupt. A drought had decimated our herd, and we were 3 months behind on our loan payments. The bank was ready to foreclose. We had 3 children to feed and nowhere to go. I looked directly at Travis. "Your mother was too proud to tell you kids how bad things were. We protected you from that reality." "What happened?" someone called from the crowd. "Sarah's younger brother Peter stepped in," I explained. "He'd made a fortune in oil and gas down in Midland. He paid off our loan entirely, but with one condition. The ranch would legally belong to him, though we would manage it and live there our entire lives." Travis's face contorted. "That's impossible. Uncle Pete, he never said a word." "Because your mother made him promise never to tell you children," I continued. "She couldn't bear for you to know how close we came to losing everything." "What happened?" someone called from the crowd. "Sarah's younger brother Peter stepped in," I explained. "He'd made a fortune in oil and gas down in Midland. He paid off our loan entirely, but with one condition. The ranch would legally belong to him, though we would manage it and live there our entire lives." Travis's face contorted. "That's impossible. Uncle Pete, he never said a word." "Because your mother made him promise never to tell you children," I continued. "She couldn't bear for you to know how close we came to losing everything. Peter agreed that upon both our deaths, the ranch would pass to his own children, your cousins Mark and Julie, unless they agreed to other arrangements." I pulled another document from my jacket pocket. "This is the actual deed to the ranch, showing Peter Williamson as the legal owner. After your mother died, Peter and I updated our arrangement."
He passed away last year, as you know, but before he did, he transferred ownership to a trust. Travis lunged forward and grabbed the paper from my hand, scanning it frantically. "This can't be legal. The papers I filed were for property you never legally owned," I finished for him. "You can't sell what was never yours, son." The silence was deafening. Travis's business associate, the developer, was already backing away toward the parking lot. "So who owns the ranch now?" Melissa asked from somewhere in the crowd. I hadn't even realized she had flown in for the party. "The trust does," I answered. "A conservation trust that guarantees the land will never be developed. It will remain a working ranch and nature preserve in perpetuity, with educational programs for local schools. The trustee is someone both Peter and I trusted implicitly." I turned to face my youngest son, who stood quietly at the edge of the gathering. "Jake has been the trustee for the past year. He and I have been working together to ensure your mother's wishes are honored." Jake nodded solemnly. The tech job in California had always been real, but he'd also been managing the trust remotely, working with local conservation experts. Travis's face had turned from white to red. "This is a lie, all of it. Dad's confused. He's having another episode." "I have copies of all the documentation in my car," Jake said calmly, stepping forward. "The trust is properly registered. The survey crews you sent were turned away legally last month, Travis. That's why you've been having so much trouble closing the deal." Travis turned on me, his voice a furious hiss. "You sneaky old man! You've ruined everything! You could have had comfort in your final years. Now what do you have?" I looked him straight in the eyes, this son I no longer recognized. "I have my integrity. I have your mother's legacy protected. And I have the satisfaction of keeping my promise to her." Without another word, I turned and walked away from my oldest son, through the parting crowd toward my old pickup truck. Behind me, I could hear the explosion of voices, questions, accusations. Taylor was crying, Diane was demanding answers from Travis, and the developer was speeding away in his luxury SUV. As I reached my truck, I heard footsteps behind me. Melissa and Jake had followed me out. "Dad," Melissa said, her eyes filled with tears, "why didn't you tell us sooner?" "Some truths wait for their moment," I replied simply. This was the moment. The fallout was immediate and overwhelming. I drove back to the motel room I'd been staying in since discovering what Travis had done 3 days earlier. I couldn't bear to be at the ranch knowing he had legal access to it, or so I thought at the time. Within an hour, both Melissa and Jake were knocking at my door. "This place is awful, Dad," Melissa said, looking around the dingy room with its faded wallpaper and sagging mattress. "Why didn't you call us?" "Pride, I suppose," I admitted. "Didn't want you kids dropping everything to rush to my rescue." Jake sat down beside me. "I'm sorry I had to keep the trust a secret. Uncle Pete and I thought it was best to let everything play out legally before confronting Travis." "You did right," I assured him. "If Travis had known about the trust, he might have found some way around it. He's always been resourceful." That night, the three of us talked for hours. I learned that Jake had suspected Travis's intentions for years, ever since he'd overheard him discussing hill country real estate values with developers at a family Christmas 5 years ago. When Uncle Pete was diagnosed with terminal cancer, Jake approached him directly about protecting the ranch. "Uncle Pete loved that land almost as much as you and Mom did," Jake explained. "He was horrified at the idea of it being carved up for McMansions." The next morning brought even more revelations. Carlton, Travis's so-called financial advisor, called me in a panic. He'd been recording their conversations as insurance, standard practice, he claimed, and was now willing to turn over evidence that Travis had deliberately misled me about the documents I signed during my recovery. "I didn't know he was scamming his own father," Carlton insisted. "I draw the line at elder abuse." By noon, Travis's wife Diane arrived at the motel with Taylor in tow. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. "Richard, I had no idea what Travis was planning," she said. "None whatsoever. I would never have allowed it if I'd known." Taylor hugged me tightly. "Grandpa, I'm so sorry. Dad's been locked in his office since yesterday, not talking to anyone." I assured them both that I didn't hold them responsible. Diane surprised me by revealing that Travis had been in financial trouble for years. Bad investments, mounting debt, a gambling problem he'd hidden from everyone. The ranch sale wasn't just about greed, it was about desperation. "That doesn't excuse what he did," she said firmly, "but I thought you should know." By the end of the week, the full extent of Travis's deception became clear. He'd falsified documents, misrepresented himself to the developers, and even taken a non-refundable deposit of $200,000 that he'd already spent. The developers were threatening legal action against him, not the trust. Jake and Melissa insisted I move in with Jake at the ranch house while we sorted everything out. The trust allowed for me to live there for the rest of my life, with Jake managing the business aspects remotely and local ranch hands handling the day-to-day operations. 3 weeks passed without a word from Travis. Then, on a quiet Sunday morning, his truck came up the driveway. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes hollow, clothes wrinkled. He sat at the kitchen table where he'd eaten thousands of meals growing up and placed a thick envelope in front of me. "It's all the documentation," he said hoarsely. "The developer's contracts, the falsified deed, everything. Their lawyers can't touch you or the trust. I've made sure of that." "At what cost to you?" I asked. "Everything," he replied simply. "The business is bankrupt. The house is being foreclosed on. Diane's filing for separation. I'll probably face charges." Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction at his downfall, but looking at my broken son, I felt only sadness. "Why, Travis? We weren't wealthy, but you never wanted for anything growing up." He couldn't meet my eyes. "It started small. Bad investments, loans to cover them, then bigger loans to cover those. I convinced myself the ranch sale would fix everything, one big score to wipe the slate clean. He finally looked up. I told myself you were getting old, that you couldn't manage anymore, that I deserved it for all the years I'd helped out. Lies upon lies. We sat in silence for a long moment. I can't forgive what you tried to do, I finally said. Not yet. Maybe not ever fully. But you're still my son. 2 months later, the trust Jake had established began to take shape in ways even I hadn't anticipated. With guidance from agricultural extension experts from Texas A&M, we implemented regenerative grazing practices that would restore the native grasslands. The old barn was converted into an education center where local schools could bring students to learn about sustainable ranching and hill country ecology. Travis pled guilty to several fraud charges, but received a reduced sentence in exchange for his cooperation. 5 years probation, significant community service, and mandatory financial counseling. Part of his sentence included working at the ranch's education center, teaching visitors about the region's ranching history, knowledge he'd absorbed despite himself throughout his childhood. Diane decided to postpone the divorce, conditionally. He needs to prove himself, she told me during one of her visits to the ranch, to himself as much as to us. The most unexpected development came 6 months after the confrontation. Mark and Julie, Uncle Pete's children and the original heirs to the ranch, proposed expanding the trust's mission. Julie, a wildlife biologist, suggested designating a third of the property as a research station focused on hill country ecosystem restoration. Mark, an accountant, created a financial structure that would ensure the ranch's sustainability for generations. Dad always told us this place was special, Julie explained during a planning meeting on the ranch's back porch. He said you and Aunt Sarah were the only ones who could have made it what it is. A year has passed now since that graduation party. The ranch looks different in some ways. New fencing for the rotational grazing paddocks, solar panels on the barn roof, a small welcome center for visitors. But the heart of it remains unchanged. The same oak tree shades Sarah's grave. The same Guadalupe River water nourishes our fields. Travis comes by 3 times a week to fulfill his community service hours. It's awkward sometimes, painful others. We're rebuilding slowly, cautiously. He lives in a small apartment in Kerrville now, seeing a therapist, attending financial responsibility classes, working part-time at an agricultural supply store. Last week, he asked if he could show me something. He took me to a remote corner of the property where he'd been working alone in his spare time.
There, he'd built a simple memorial bench overlooking the valley, inscribed with Sarah's favorite saying, "We don't own the land, we merely borrow it from future generations." "I thought Mom would have liked this spot," he said quietly. I sat on the bench, feeling the solid wood beneath me, looking out over the land that had defined my life. "Yes," I replied, "she would have." Looking back now, as I sit on Sarah's memorial bench, watching the Texas sunset paint the hill country gold, I realize that what Travis nearly destroyed wasn't just land, it was our family's story. This ranch isn't measured in acres or dollars. It's measured in memories, in lessons learned, in promises kept. The trust is thriving now. Local schools bring students weekly. Researchers study our regenerative practices. And most importantly, 3 generations of our family work together to honor Sarah's vision. Even Travis, slowly earning back trust one day at a time. I'm 72 now, and while I don't know how many more sunsets I'll see from this bench, I know this land will remain long after I'm gone, not as some developer's profit, but as a living legacy. If you've ever faced betrayal from someone you love, or fought to protect something precious, remember that integrity matters more than money. Promises matter. Legacy matters. And sometimes the hardest battles are the ones most worth fighting. If you found value in my story, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who might need to hear it.
Thanks for listening, and remember, we don't own the land, we merely borrow it from future generations.